We are the Ace Pirates group, and today we're going to be talking about unethical behaviors in sports, more specifically unethical behaviors in the sport of baseball and football.
Hey, my name is Daniel Kindle, and today I'm going to talk about how the Major League Baseball Association is actually very unethical in all of their practices that they do. The first way I'm going to talk about is batters actually rig their bats so that they can get faster speed on the bat and farther hits. The way they do this is they actually cut out the center of the bat and they put something called cork in there. It hollows out the bat and it makes it very, very light so that way they can swing the bat faster and get a lot harder hits and they can react faster to any fastballs coming at them. Sammy Sosa, one of the best hitters of our time, in 2003 got caught doing it in a game and he only got a 7-game suspension. That's not very good considering how unethical he was. And if people see that he's only getting a 7-day suspension, it's not going to stop the next man from doing it also. They have 162 games in a year, so 7 games is not that much at all. Number 2, the way that pitchers actually are unethical in the league is they bring out sandpaper and other stuff like tar and even something as simple as spit, and they rub it all over the baseball so that they can get more speed on their pitches, more drop on their curveballs, make them just feel better in their hands. That way it's harder for the batters to actually hit it. In 1987, a Marlins pitcher actually got caught bringing sandpaper and sanding down the baseball on the mound because he wanted to have the seams a little bit lower so that when he threw a curveball, it would drop a lot more and the batters would not be able to hit it. That guy actually only got sentenced to a 4-game suspension. Again, not very good on the league's part. It's looking very bad on them because they're not giving out any repercussions. The third way and most unethical way that people actually do this in the league are they steal plays from other teams. The way they do this is that some people that might be on a team get traded to another team and they tell them all about their pitchers, their batters, who's their weak link, and they give off signs that the pitchers do. Some pitchers might give a little wiggle, a little thing with their glove, and it'll show that if they're throwing a fastball, a curveball, or whatever, it'll tip them off and it'll have the batter ready. That way they're not guessing at the plate. That is not something that needs to be happening. It is perfectly legal, but it's not something that you want to be doing. Also, a big reason that it was a big fluke is someone actually got caught stealing signs, stealing pitching signs from a catcher. And because the catcher gives a sign to the pitcher, so the pitcher figures out what he wants to throw, a fastball or a curveball from the catcher, and they steal signs and they figure out what it is, and then they tip them off and they tell the batter. So they're sitting there waiting ready to just jack one out of the park. Now, the thing about this that makes it really unethical is the league doesn't do anything to it. They give simple suspensions. They don't do any repercussions at all, and that's not cool. It makes fans that are looking up to these people as role models look up and say, oh my gosh, they're a cheater. I'm going to grow up and I'm going to do that. They got to the major league level. I can do the same way. I don't think that's very ethical, and I don't think that the major league is taking any steps to stopping that. They need to do something and force more punishments for a lot longer games before doing anything else. Thank you.
I'm William. Steroids and other performance-enhancing drugs have been an issue in baseball that has soured the game since the late 80s. They provide an unnatural advantage that allows players to hit big numbers without much hard work and in a very quick way, which brings the competitive integrity of the game into question. The widespread use of steroids in the late 80s to early 2000s led to that time period to be known as the steroids era. To put it into perspective, steroid user Jose Canseco explained in his 2005 book Juiced that he would administer the drugs to his teammates and that he personally believes over 75% of the league was using the drug themselves. There are a lot of reasons why baseball players use steroids. One of the biggest being that they don't see it as cheating, but as a tool for competitive advantage. And it's a competitive advantage that can only be neutralized by another player using it themselves. Because of this, steroid use among players would go largely unreported, and you'd create a snowball effect where a lot of players would use steroids and there would be no risk involved for using it. In general, the marginal benefit outweighed the cost, and financially, players would be able to receive a huge pay increase based off of the performance boost they would get by using steroids. In 2005, it was reported there would be an almost 30% increase based on the performance boost a player would get. In addition, fans still support players even after they are exposed for using steroids. Players like Alex Rodriguez and Barry Bonds are still fan favorites, even though it's well known that they use performance-enhancing drugs. Over the last 15 years, the league has implemented a lot of rules in order to reduce the use of steroids across the league. In 2003, the league increased the amount of drug testing and the amount of game suspensions a player would receive after they're caught using steroids, starting with a 50-game ban into an 80-game, which is about a half season, and a lifetime ban for the third offense. In 2006, the league implemented the Joint Drug and Prevention Treatment Program, which sought to educate players on the negative effects of using steroids and provided treatment for those players that were caught. Although usage went down, in 2014 there was another scandal with the Biogenesis Clinic, where they were caught giving performance-enhancing drugs to over a dozen professional baseball players. Those players were caught and they were suspended, receiving 50-game bans, but also resulting in an increase in punishment for those who were caught going forward, resulting in a half-season ban on the first offense, a full season on the second offense, and then a lifetime ban on the third offense. Players would also receive no pay if they were caught and punished with a season offense. Alongside game suspensions, the league has yet to induct any steroid users into the Hall of Fame, although there are still many players in the Hall of Fame who have later been revealed to have used steroids in their time in the league. After a downward trend following 2003, home run numbers are starting to follow a similar trend as in the steroids era, and it causes a great debate on what exactly is causing it. It could be the natural evolution of the game, or it could also be a resurgence of steroids. Steroids still being thought about when considering the growth of the game means that the league hasn't fully erased steroids from the game, and they can still do more to address the issue. It could be worthwhile for the league to educate the public on why it's unethical for the players to use steroids, so that when a player returns from suspension, they don't have the same fan support they could rely on before. Another thing the league could do is increase the suspensions for being caught. Right now, the suspensions aren't harsh enough, so they could be something like a season ban on the first offense and a lifetime ban on the second offense, or the league could adopt a full no-tolerance policy so that there's a lifetime ban on the first offense. Something else the league could do is start monitoring the training of the players more closely. If there is a non-biased party to monitor the players, there is more incentive to catch and discourage other offenders. In conclusion, there is a dark cloud over baseball with all the unethical issues it faces, and the league can still take a lot of measures going forward in order to address them.
Hi, I'm Salvina. Throughout the years, there has been a great leniency regarding NFL players and their criminal offenses. In 2015, a study done by the University of Texas at Dallas, researchers found that the overall arrest rate of NFL players was significantly lower than those of men ages 20 to 40 in the general population. For many years, the total arrest rate for the general population has been 1.5 to 2 times higher than those total arrest rates of the NFL players. Since the NFL invests a lot of time and money into their players, they want to keep them on the field as much as possible. Most of those athletes get their cases appealed, which results in a brief suspension or minor fines with no serious jail time. Since September 2006, law enforcement authorities have pursued 50 domestic violence cases against NFL players. This includes 1 for murder and 5 allegations regarding choking pregnant women and assaulting them. One of the most well-known domestic violence scandals involves Ray Rice. The running back for the Baltimore Ravens got suspended for the first 2 games of the season for violating the NFL's public conduct policy that followed his off-season arrest for domestic violence. Rice was caught on elevator cameras striking his then-fiancée unconscious and dragging her body out of the elevator. He pleaded not guilty to a third-degree charge of aggravated assault. Since he was a first-time offender, Rice avoided standing trial and was accepted into a diversion program. He did not face any serious jail time. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell announced a new league policy which essentially stated that a player does not have to be charged by police and prosecutors to be suspended, and a second offense for domestic violence would result in a lifetime ban. However, this was never enforced. Only 3 days later, the NFL never announced any suspension of Ray McDonald for his domestic violence cases. He was accused of dragging his then-fiancée, Kendra Scott, out of bed in the middle of the night when he then kicked her in the stomach while she was pregnant with their child. These serious criminal offenses are merely a slap on the wrist to the players who can get away with it. In recent news, Ezekiel Elliott's 6-game suspension has been placed on hold again, and he is set to play in the next game. The running back for the Dallas Cowboys has been facing different allegations about his physical abuse towards his ex-girlfriend. At the time of the first claim against Elliott, the Lions' offensive line Rodney Austin was charged with assault on his then-girlfriend and their child. He was found guilty to assault on a female and agreed to 12 months probation and to complete a supervised intervention program. He got a 6-game suspension and was then publicly dropped from the team 4 days later after the arrest. In an interview, Austin said they want to keep their investments. They want to protect their stars who are either coming in or are in the prime of their career. Zeke is out there playing and I'm not. The NFL needs to hold their players accountable for their actions, regardless of their status as public figures.
My name's Shai, and I'm going to be talking to you today about some of the unethical behaviors that the National Football League has participated in. Before I get into that, however, I'd like to talk to you about what a concussion is. A concussion is essentially blunt force trauma to the head that causes the brain to smash off the skull. This has short-term symptoms such as memory loss, nausea, headaches, but the National Football League has researched this. They've known about concussions, and they've made many statements referring to how there's no evidence to suggest that concussions cause long-term permanent damage. This was refuted by Dr. Bennett Omalu. He was a Nigerian doctor that came to America. He was living in Pittsburgh. He performed an autopsy on Mike Webster, a Hall of Fame football player who died at 50 due to a heart attack. And when looking at his brain, he discovered it didn't look right at all. It looked much older than what a 50-year-old's brain should look like. There were a lot of problems with it. And he diagnosed this disease known as CTE. I wish I could pronounce it, but I can't. It's short for CTE. And he correlated the long-term disease with repeated hits to the head, concussions essentially. And the National Football League at the time had a lot of these. A lot of the players have sustained major head injuries throughout their long careers, not only in the NFL, but as children when they started playing tackle football. Maybe in middle school they started playing in the league, they got some concussions, high school, off to college, off to the NFL. So there's a good 25 years of continuous concussions and head damage that caused some serious problems. Dr. Amalu found out. And some of the symptoms of the long-term CTE were depression, memory loss, severe memory loss, and some cases of dementia. And this can cause some serious problems for future NFL players, ending their lives a little too short. Omalu published his findings expecting to be embraced by the National Football League, but he was rejected. They tried to sweep it under the rug, they ignored him, they tried to ruin his reputation. A little later, a Boston University study found that 131 out of 165 brains of deceased football players had cases of CTE. So this was a disease that was embedded in the National Football League. It wasn't just a few cases, it wasn't a few outliers. A majority of National Football League players had this disease and didn't even know about it because the NFL refused to acknowledge the possibility.
My name is Eric, and I will be talking about the ethical sport of volleyball. How is volleyball ethical? Rules are strictly enforced by coaches. Any drug use is an automatic disqualification, is 100% untolerated by coaches. 5 principles that all players must respect in order to remain in the professional sport in the U.S. Coaches are required to work ethically at all times or will get in serious problems by the Association of Volleyball. Principle 1 is the professional practices of the sport. Player must pledge to practices that protect public and their profession, be a responsible associate of the USA Volleyball, and maintain current USA Volleyball Impact or CAP certification. Remain up to date on professional growth and education on the sport. Use their knowledge and professional association for the benefit of people being served. Always be fair and truthful with other players in a positive light. Most avoid discrimination at all times. Principle 2, coach and athlete relationship. Coaches must pledge to maintain a professional relationship with all players. ensure all activities are safe for the players as well, educate players on safety and hazardous drills, create flexible schedules with players who attend school, comply with regulations and guidelines for recruiting practices, teach players individual and team respect for opponents at all times, prioritize attending all practices and games to keep track of players or have someone responsible enough to cover. As a role model of the team, must avoid any kind of drug use at all times during the presence of the players. Principle 3, confidentiality. Pledge that all coaches and team members will keep information knowledge about confidential, whether personal or about any plays. Coach will inform team of videotape recordings to respect their identity. Only reason these videos can be used without permission is in the point of abuse of any player or coach or disrespect. Principle number 4, staff and employee relationships. They must pledge to respect relationships with employees and staff on a professional level. Must avoid exploiting trust and dependency. Dignity and respect at work at all times. Principle number 5, process of relating to violation of code. All players must pledge the ethics code is administered under the authority of the USA Volleyball or other responsible organizations. Any violations of this code must be subject to processes of USA Volleyball. Must provide the vent of disciplinary actions to prevent further problems to arise. And must respect all coaches and players at all times. Thank you for listening.
In conclusion, the business of professional sports should not be criticized less because of their unethical behavior compared to other businesses, but even more because of the influence they have on the millions of people that watch them every day.